Yo, I don't think we should talk about this.
Come on, why not?
People might misunderstand what we're trying to say, you know? But that's a part of life. Come on.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
The 1991 controversial song Let's Talk About Sex by American hip-hop trio Salt and Pepper left many bashful when it played on the airwaves, but it did reveal one thing, a cultural challenge that we have, that we do not talk about sex in a healthy way, and in turn our children are left at the mercy of musicians such as those, the media, their peers, relatives, and in the worst case, predators to introduce them to sex. And in a significant number of cases, children end up engaging in risky sexual behavior, leading to child pregnancies, as you've seen, and sexually transmitted diseases, and even death. And so tonight on Monday Special, we are asking who should be taking the lead in educating our children about sex. And if you're a parent who's watching our show tonight, when is it time to have that talk with your kids, and what exactly do you say? We want to remind you, our viewers, that tonight's conversation may not be suitable for very young children. Here are my guests now in studio. To my immediate left is Dr. Charity Waithimia. She is a clinical psychologist. To my right is Nyambura Karaoke, who is a mother of 4. And Brenda Rajwai is a student. And I want to welcome you all to our program, and thank you so much for being willing to talk about this candidly. Dr. Hari, let me start with you, and I want to begin with a definition of terms. When you hear sex education, all sorts of things go through our minds. You see a teacher telling your kids about the birds and the bees, and you're not comfortable about that. What does that term actually mean?
Sex education simply means teaching about sexuality. I am not very sure why somebody called it sex education, because if I were asked, it would be something to do with human sexuality. Because human sexuality covers the totality of who you are, your femaleness, if I may say, your maleness, all that is encompassed in human sexuality. But sex, because the term mainly will mean either your gender or copulation, the act itself. So therefore, I would prefer it to have something to do with human sexuality.
Okay.
Not necessarily sex education. But it is simply coined to talk about what is sex, the gender roles, gender identity, and all that comes with even the anatomy, the physiology of the reproductive system, all that is encompassed in that. Yeah.
And in your opinion, what is the role of the parents, the school system, and the society in educating children about it?
All of us need to be involved in educating children about their sexuality, because learning about sexuality, the human sexuality, starts from age 0 to death. And therefore the parent, right from when the child is young, needs to start teaching. The teacher, when the child goes to school, the society needs not to shy away from talking about human sexuality, because that is who we are. We are sexual beings, and we need to talk about it. I know that in Africa, in our culture, it's a taboo, and that's why most people shy away. But it is the high time we empower everyone to know that we need to talk about our sexuality, because like you said earlier, our children and their generations and generations to come are going to get it from the wrong source.
All right.
Yeah.
Brenda, you are the youngest in our panel. You're a student. So let's start with, how old are you, and where did you get your information regarding sex from?
I'm 21 years old. I got my information regarding sex from school. That is my teachers and also pastors. Yes.
And what did they say? This was part of like a sex ed or a biology class?
My science class.
Your science class, okay.
Yes, in class 5 when we're being taught about the reproductive system. Yes. Also in biology. So that's basically the school bit. When it came to pastors and mentors, now that is in church. They will talk about relationship and in it get to have the sex talk. Should you do it? Should you have sex? Should you not? Kind of thing.
And in your mind, is it a good thing? Is it a naughty thing? How do you classify it? Where does it sit in your mind?
For me, sex is not bad, provided it's under the confines of marriage, because that's what my Christian faith has taught me.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it's a good thing, but it has a time for it and a context for it. So I would be, if I'm not being too forward, and you can tell me if I am being, you are not sexually active, and you haven't been. And you're proud of that.
Yes.
All right, good. And how does that sit with your peers in a society where everything is like on hyper sex drive? You know, you can no longer just sell a lollipop without, you know, selling a lollipop. You can't just sell a car without really selling everything else around the car. How do you find your life choices, you know, at odds or in comparison to what's vogue?
For me, I never find it as a struggle staying as I am because of the people I surround myself with. The people that you are around really dictate the kind of person that you're going to become in life, and they determine the kind of pressures that you'll have in life. So I've set myself with around the people that really help build me. So I don't struggle with so much pressures such that if I see people struggling with such issues, what comes to my mind quickly is how can I help them? How can I teach them to walk in this other path and not the way they are walking?
Okay.
Yep.
And that for you is guided by your faith perspective.
Yes.
All right, Brenda, you're a parent. I beg your pardon, Nyambura, you're a parent. 4 kids. First, tell us what ages.
Well, 14, 7, 5, and 3.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have begun to have that conversation with some of your children?
Basically, I would say all.
Okay.
Because I do it age appropriately.
Okay.
I usually start when they are very young. As you birth them, you touch them and tell them, these are your eyes, these are your ears, this is, and then when they grow older, I mean, the 7-year-old, 7-year-old, I can tell, now these are your private parts. It's called a vagina. It's supposed to be ABCD. The 14-year-old knows what to do and not what to do. She knows how to relate and come and say, you're not supposed to touch me here. This is wrong. This is inappropriate. She knows even how to dress when she's leaving the house versus when she's in the house. And they know that I have taught them that precious goods are usually hidden very far and very deep, and they have a reason and a purpose. So,
right. And that's quite a clever way to put it. All right. Dr. Let me come back to you. You know, both you and Nyambura have agreed that, you know, this is a conversation that you start, you know, right at the beginning. You're, as it were, changing your baby and you're naming parts, etc. But when would you say children are really, if I may say, sexually aware, and they understand the difference between their parts, a boy's parts versus a girl's parts, and begin to have that curiosity, if you like, about who they are and how their bodies function?
Okay, you will find that from 2 years, a child is aware. So in early childhood, they will start getting mesmerized, especially when they start going to baby class, that the boys are standing and they have this thing that they are peeing with. And why is mine coming from down here?
Right.
And so they get curious all the way from 2 years, 3 years. By the time they are 5, they are able to tell, I'm different from the boy. If it was a girl who was born first and a boy is born in the family second, the girl will start now asking question, why does my brother look like this? Or the boy will start asking, why does my sister look like this? And therefore, by early childhood, age 2, a child starts noticing that they're different from the other. And that's when they get curious. In the kindergarten, you will find they will go peep in the other genders' toilets, and they would want to know when they are changing for swimming, why are they looking different? And they start giggling, and they now get aware. And at that point, and even at 2 years, they need to, like she has said, when you're bathing them, and I encourage that parents begin teaching them from what they are comfortable with, the words, but eventually, like she has said, when you tell a child this is the eye, then we need to get progressively comfortable with telling the child when they ask, this thing in my brother, you need to say, this is a penis.
And yes, give it its right term.
Yes,
Right.
give it the right term. This is a vagina, so that they get used. It's no longer a taboo to them, and they don't have to hide to talk about it. The way they talk about their fingers, their eyes, they can easily be able to talk about it.
And let me stay with you a little bit more just in terms of understanding what is appropriate information at what age. And Nyambura, I love very much to hear, you know, how you faced it, you know, through the years for your children. But Doctor, if I'd start with you. So we've talked about 2 years old, and you know, around that age, we are naming parts. Are we, and perhaps generally talking about what those parts are used for instance, in terms of, you know, going to the bathroom, etc. Past that age, move us forward.
Okay, from there, by the time the child is 4 to 6 years, that is mid-childhood, then they start asking, they'll get curious. Some who are fast growing, they can start even asking those questions at 3 years. If they see a mother pregnant, they will start asking, where did this baby come from?
Santa.
And you need to explain that
Right.
in their language. And sometimes, like the people who are in the farm, they can start using words like a seed,
Right.
and the child starts understanding that a seed was put here. Because later on, when they are in their twin years, then they will understand where that seed comes from. Is what we call a sperm from a male. So this came from daddy, if it is a child, your child.
Right.
And if it is somebody else, they are pointing at, where did that baby and that lady come from? Then you start doing that. They'll start again by the time they are 5 years asking, how will this baby get out of here? And that is where we make a mistake as adults. We start telling them, mommy will be taken to some place and then they'll be removed. But we leave the child wondering, how? Will they cut your stomach?
Yes.
What will happen? Or is this child inside your stomach that they'll come out through the mouth? At that point, by the time they are in mid-childhood, up to 6 years, they are able to understand. And because you have taught them, you know, by showing them the body parts, you can tell them the baby will be squeezed out through my private parts, and probably if you have gotten to a level where they know it's called a vagina or the vulva, you can easily be, and the child
That's you're saying it's about 6 years.
Yes,
7 years.
6. From 6, 7 years, mid-childhood, they'll be able to understand that. And because they are seeing it in cartoon and they are seeing it everywhere, then these are not the 80s, the 90s, when the children were not exposed to this. So they are able to understand and they remember, oh, that's what that cartoon was doing. And then as they grow older, you know, by this time they understand even about their nudity, their inappropriate touching and all
Right.
that. When they're in their twin years, that is 9 to 12 years, you now are telling them almost everything because you're preparing them for adolescence. If they ask about, I mean, they have seen people develop breasts, they have seen people develop, hair, and probably they are even seeing the early bloomers who are among their age mates, who are having, the voices deepening and all that.
Right.
Now you need to have that conversation so that they understand what is sex? What is this that happens in people, and how does it come about?
And let me pause you there, and and now we're going to talk about how to actually have a conversation about the act of sex and what it is shortly. But Nyambura, just tell us your own experience, talking to your children about this. What has it been like?
With the first one, it's experimental. It was hard until I came home with a baby and she asked me, were you cut or did you push? And then I was like,
how old was she when she was asking this?
She was 6.5.
Whoa.
Yes. So I concur with Dr. here that they are aware. We watch National Geographics.
Yeah.
I mean, they see animals giving birth, so they know. So mine came as a shock. I was like, she's ready.
Wow.
And then we had this conversation. Then I was like, now she knows exactly which part of the body does what. And then we've had a very fantastic journey where she comes and tells me, oh, I've started my period. It's not a secret.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I want to just dial you back a little bit.
Yes.
At 6 years. And I'm not asking were you cut or did you push. That is not my question. I beg your pardon if it appears that that's the direction I'm going with. But how, I just want to understand, how did you respond and what kind of words were you using? Especially because at that age, the child is completely innocent, and it is we as adults who have all our hang-ups, about sex, about what it is, or my child should not know, who are really going through the confusion and the struggle of what term is appropriate, what do I say? So if you would just help paint a picture for the parents at home in terms of how you managed that conversation.
How I managed, like I said, it was a shocker.
Yes.
But what I did, I was like, okay, why should people be cut? But of course, we had already told her, or she had learned from other people and ourselves, that you go for an operation. So she just knows you're cut up and the baby is removed. And of course, I'm sure there was something that was watched somewhere. So how I went about it, now I sat her down. I told her there's a reason as to why someone would undergo an operation vis-a-vis having a vaginal birth. And this is how it happens. If you have complications, if the baby is maybe too big or is sitting in the wrong position, then this is when the doctor will cut you open. And it's not cutting like scissors and paper. They use medical apparatus and put you to sleep and remove the baby. And then...
And this is a 6-year-old?
This is a 6-year-old, yeah.
And she said, okay. How did that go?
No.
Did you see her sort of digest that information?
Yes, she went like, oh, okay. So which one was it? Of course, we had to have that conversation.
Right.
And then I was like, now she's ready. She's ready now to move on from your private parts. They are called this, and this is their work. And what will happen is that the breast will be used to feed the baby. Of course, she has seen that. And the sexual organs, the vagina, will be for procreation at the right time and giving birth.
And are you having this is your daughter we're talking about, and I have
3 daughters and a boy.
3 daughters and a boy.
Yes, the boy is 5.
The boy, that would be the youngest, is it?
No, there's a 3-year-old.
There's a 3-year-old, okay.
Yes.
Second to last. So are you having this conversation with your spouse, your partner, or was this just you and your daughter?
Initially it was just me and the girl, and then of course the daddy has to come in because we took a parenting course to just understand how now to it came as breathe in, breathe out. So we went for a parenting course where now we met with teachers who now taught us how to identify when the child is ready for the correct terminologies and for the right conversations. Okay. And now, since then, it's been smooth sailing. Okay. Yes.
And so from time to time, your husband will take part in that conversation, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Do you have an idea or an understanding of how that conversation may be different with your son than with your daughter?
Yes, it will be different because already I have been called to school because he has decided that his private parts are for show. Oh. And I'm like, ooh.
Oh my goodness.
When did this happen? Because
no, I have a son, so that's why I'm laughing. Okay, go ahead.
So, and we were like, hold on, why does he need to do this? I'll be taken aback. But from a male perspective, and I'm not a chauvinist or a feminist or anything, they'll be like, that's my boy. you know,
Well done.
well done. But I'm thinking this.
Go and display. I know.
You're not
Right.
supposed to be doing
Right.
this. So you're like, okay, why do you need to show your private parts? They're private and they have a purpose. When you go to the bathroom, you do this. So yes, it will be a different conversation, and it has started to being a different conversation. I think it's easier with the girls.
And that's quite true. We're almost all moms here, and boys are that way. They want to, you know, display themselves. There's a bit of sport in it, almost, you know, in how they do it. What would you advise then at that age? I mean, this is a 3-year-old, and he's quite fascinated with himself, possibly with his projectile and things like that. Boys do this. At what point do you start saying, okay, Baba, this is not for the world?
I think
This is for potty time. Right.
I think it should start as early as possible, and that's
Right.
why, as we are teaching and training the child, they need to know, like she has said, these are private parts. You know, there is, I mean, if we look at psychosexual development, the psychological and sexual development of a child, you will find that there's a lot of, you know, locked up energy, the libido, the sexual energy that is locked up in every human being. And therefore, at every stage, in fact, this child, when they are in, you know, the second psychosexual stage, the anal stage, part of it they would want to, you know, because the anus and the gonads are, I mean, the sexual organs are close together. They would want to play around with it. And there is pleasure that comes with that. And that's why the earliest the child, you notice your child is, you know, having a
Curious.
lot of curious, a lot of pleasure in it.
Yeah.
Because there should never be overindulgence with that pleasure. Neither should there be, you know, them to feel like it's the greatest crime on earth that they
Right.
committed. So the parent needs to see the balance, and also the teachers, so that this child is helped to know the right way of handling. So that, because either overindulgence or strictness, over strictness, will lead to some
Harming the
other
child.
wrong behavior.
Right.
Yes, because now they will, if overindulgence, now they can end up in other things like masturbation and all that throughout their life. And you know, now that later on in teen years and later can become an addiction.
Right.
Again, if it is very restricted, the fixation can come, and they may now even hate their gender and think things to do with sexuality are all wrong.
Right.
Yes.
I'm curious about how you're interpreting this conversation. How are you interpreting this conversation? What is? I mean, obviously, you've made it well clear that this is you're waiting to be married, and that's quite noble. Do you think you would want to introduce your children to sex the way in which you've heard, or the way in which you grew up? What do you favor?
Definitely I'd favor what they're saying, because personally, before I was taught about sex, I already knew. And just as they're saying, by the time a child is around age 6, they're already asking, where do babies come from? It took me way back, and I asked that question, and I was told about the supermarket. Then
They come from Uchumi. I think, okay. How old were you? Do you have any idea how old you were?
I think I was around class 1, so that should be at around age 7, 6 there.
Okay.
Yes. And as I was growing, as she said, there's that libido, and you don't know where to take all this energy to.
Exactly.
You've been told sex is bad.
Right.
But the TV is portraying something different.
Right.
The music you're watching, the movies you're watching, it's
Yeah.
portraying something different. On the other hand, boys are evil. You're in the same classes with them. So how do you go about this, and how do you go about all that energy that is within you?
Right.
Because you already feel some pleasure, just as Dr. is saying.
Right.
There's that pleasure you're feeling. So how do you go about it?
How did you go about it?
Personally, how I've gone about it, different ways. But what I've embraced most is I've kept myself so busy with
Right.
so many things.
Yes.
Yes, taking extra classes now that I'm in campus, going the extra mile. I give myself very little time to be idle, so
Right.
that by the time I'm idle, I'm just too tired. The only thing I want to do is sleep,
Right.
wake up.
And that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You've talked about, being, you do know they don't come from the supermarket, right? I'm just teasing. But the reason why I'm asking you, how you would interpret that information is because, you're brave and confident enough to be here on national television talking about something that very few people would do, even those who have done it, Exactly. And so, you do seem well informed and aware about yourself and aware about the choices that you're making, but you come from a background where you weren't necessarily told, at least from what we are hearing, the age appropriate information at 6. No, they don't come from the supermarket. I'm just trying to figure out how you developed or how you got the right information and how you, and what were your shock absorbers for it when you found out they are not coming from the supermarket, and how you feel you would relay that information to your children, because you seem to be happy with your faith position. I'm sure that's something you'd want to pass on, right?
Yes.
Correct? Okay, very good. But how do you think you would do that, perhaps in a way that is different from how you got your information?
Get to educate. I will follow her procedure. Get to educate them from as young as they can understand some little things. Get to educate kids on from as young as they can understand that there's your private part. Because personally, I remember when I was in pre-unit and a classmate shows me his penis and I'm like,
Okay.
yes.
He was probably just
And I
showing a
remember
pencil, the same pencil from his pouch. Here's a pencil. Here's this as well. Because you're saying you're in pre-unit, right?
Yes,
so
I'm
that's
in
like
pre-unit
curiosity.
and I've not even been taught about these things. I've never even heard about them. You've not asked such like questions, but then just from, I have older brothers, so just from mommy bathing them on their own, then the ladies come later, you already know that you are not supposed to. Yes, so
Right. Okay, I hear you. You're in campus now. How do you deal with? You've talked about keeping quite busy. Do you feel that is sufficient to deal with peer pressure for you? Is there that pressure?
it is keeping yourself busy is not enough. That those times you need to speak out, because yes, you've kept yourself busy, but then what you're doing is just suppressing it, and it keeps coming, especially for us ladies. Every month when you're in your periods, then just a few weeks during the ovulation period, and a lot of hormones are active, and you just don't know how to go about it.
Let me pause you there, and I rightfully understand you, but I just want to bring you in, Dr. a little bit in terms of those young people who do choose to abstain, and it's quite a noble thing to do. But she's talking about the constant pressure and suppressing it. There are those who may say, is this really healthy? Is it the way, since we're talking about a religious perspective for you, is this the point where scripture says then go ahead and get married? don't suffer, as it were. And just really to understand the role of faith in such a context.
I think faith comes in so strongly because you see, when you have faith in God, you are able to suppress, and already your values are based on something that talks about not engaging in sexual activity before marriage. And therefore, even when that pressure she's talking about, the libido is there, you're able to have hope. You have the hope in the faith that gives you values in life, and that can help dissipate part of that energy and move on, because something better is coming. And you see, as you look forward to getting married and you have kept yourself pure, that faith really motivates you. I will go another month, I'll go another year, I will go another 2 years because I know eventually when I get married, it will be enjoyable. And that becomes a motivation that dissipates the moments that you have that very high libido that would tempt you to engage in sexual activity.
And that is now from a faith perspective. And obviously I speak to a very wide audience. Not all necessarily believe that. What do you say to those who have a different opinion, that sex is healthy, that, you know, feelings should not be suppressed, and as long as it's done, you know, between consenting adults and in if I may use the term, a safe environment, then it is fine?
I think for me, I would encourage, I know in psychology you'll be told it's a human basic need.
Right.
However, even food, which is a human basic need,
you don't eat all of it.
Yes. Right now, I've not had my dinner. I'm hungry.
Right.
But I can't say I'll not come for this show, start crying because I don't have the food here. I can wait. And because from 5 years, there is our structure of, you know, there is the super ego that develops, the ego that can help you wait, not like a child. And therefore, I know that we are in an era where, you know, everybody is, if I feel like sex, I go in and I have. But as you have asked me to talk to the audience who may not be, you know, somebody who believes in God, yes, there is autonomy. But the question I ask is that our instincts, although they are animal instincts, we have a mind that was created by God that can give us self-control. And one needs to sit down and interrogate themselves and ask themselves, should I always have sex because I've felt the need? Is there need to wait? And if I wait, what are the advantages of that? Because I believe there are the advantages of waiting vis-a-vis having sex every moment you feel like having sex.
And what should the advantages be?
The advantages, one, I mean, there is a motivation to now engage with it when you are more mature or when you're married. There is the motivation that you get satisfied because you know when you have sex with everyone and everybody, and you have learned to have it as an instinct. Even when you get married, things can be there, or when you're an adult, things can come up where you don't have to have sex every day. And those are the people who will even not be faithful in a marriage. And therefore, I think, and I believe that having control in matters of sex is advantageous to a human being.
Okay, but I think you've put it quite well when you talk about eating. I mean, just fine, eating is, you know, necessary for human life, but you don't just go eating everything.
Yes.
I think that quite clearly says it, and the element of discipline, I think, in what you're saying. We just have about under 4 minutes to do this. I have a quick question to you, Nyambura. You're the parent, and you know, with your eldest daughter, do you think it is ever, or have you had a conversation with your daughter in the scope of the sex talk about contraception? Is that a conversation you would have, and do you think it is right for parents to do that? Should parents be the first port of call in saying, this is a condom, these are the other contraceptives, etc.?
I would say, like the greatest man and the wisest man, do not awaken love before its time. How I look at it, there's no point about talking about contraception because I am not an authoritarian parent or a hands-off parent. I am that authoritative parent. There's a difference. I know Dr. can affirm. Authoritarian is where everything, my word is law. When I'm authoritative, they know where the limits are and where not to cross, which parts not to cross. So we've had this conversation over and over again, but it's not about when to use contraception and when not. It's never even crossed my mind. Why would it cross my mind while I have taught you the values of staying pure and the honor that you get even in keeping yourself pure? There is no, we can't even have that conversation. It's a non-starter, I would say, because if I teach you right, if I show you what is right, then there's no point of having that conversation ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So would it be then something then you would discuss with your daughter, maybe when she's engaged, when she's about to get married, based on your values?
Sex education doesn't start when you're getting married or when you're going for premarital counseling because you're engaged. It's something that has started when you're bathing them and talking to them. Because we usually say, even in marriage, it's not about the 10-week program or the engagements and all these things. It's what she has seen and what I have told her. And like Brenda is saying here, if she was taught from an early age, even these urges, she would know how to suppress them, knowing that and I'm glad that she's able to do that, knowing that there's a reward that awaits me. And it's not about flashing cards that, oh, I was married like this. No. There is that honor of, I kept myself pure, and this is what I have been taught. And I usually tell them, okay, at least the two older ones, there is honor in honoring your parents and actually emulating what that I have taught you, and you're able to carry it on into your next life and into your marriage and all that.
Dr. Should parents also be at the front of talking about contraception?
My answer would be yes. Because again, like Brenda has said, they are learning these things. You may not talk to your child about contraceptives in the light of them using them. It's them understanding what are these contraceptives that you're talking about, so that they know what are the advantages and disadvantages. Because if a child starts using contraceptives very early, and especially the chemical ones and some of the ones that are intrusive into the body, the child needs to understand that these ones are harmful in the long run. And therefore, I would say parents need to talk about it so that a child does not just think, oh, can I buy the after, it's called after?
Morning after.
The morning after, the morning after pill. And they don't understand what they are. But if mommy had started talking about it and let parents use every opportunity, sometimes in the media, in the papers, and sometimes you will put it here and say, you know, the morning after pill in Nairobi, you know, the pharmacies, what. Let the parents use such and say, now this morning after pill, what is it used for? You know, girls when they have, and boys when they have had sex, or men and women, they will run for it so that, you know, conception does not come. So that's why I'm saying it is good for people to know, because sometimes people live in some conditions that are adverse. And sometimes you may not voluntarily want sex. It could be a rape. If a child knew, if a girl child knew, or a boy child, because these days we are not just talking about the females, we are also talking about endangered males. If they knew how to insert a condom, that would save them. And you've just given statistics on HIV and AIDS. And therefore, I would say yes, not that I'm teaching my child, you know, have sex and use contraceptives, but I'm making them aware. These are called contraceptives, these are their uses, these are their pros, these are their cons. When can you be safe with it?
Would you ever advocate, especially, you know, sometimes parents are caught unawares and you thought your child wasn't active, and then something happens and you discover that they are. Excuse me. At such a point, it may be difficult for a parent who even has the hopes that, you know, my child will way too much older, or, you know, whatever, perhaps moral or religious, you know, circumstance, in order to engage. But, you know, they've jumped to the gun. Here they are, they've had it, and you discover this. Can you dial back that conversation back to waiting, or is it better to say, all right, you're engaging in this, fine, I'm not necessarily the happiest parent in the world right now, but these are contraceptives, and actually give your child contraceptives? Would you ever advocate for that?
Now,
finally,
for me, as me, I would not advocate for that. I would still, even when that child has made a mistake, I would One, I would continue with sex education in terms of how do they take care of themselves. Yes, they fell, but falling does not mean you continue. But if, for example, when I'm teaching the youth, of course you may not force everyone to abstain. And therefore, when I'm teaching the people, whether they are youth or older people, because all human beings are sexual beings, I would want to make them aware that there is need for protection. However, I will not be explicit to tell anyone you can continue with having sex but use contraception. So that is the position I would take. Even if I have my child and I know that they have fallen and they are sexually active, I would still want to continue teaching them what I believe is the right perspective about sex.
That's our time. I thank you all so much for, speaking so candidly, openly, and, even allowing us to laugh and not be frozen in our seats by this conversation. I appreciate you all so much, and especially you. Well done. And congratulations on, the life that you are choosing to live. We wish you the very best. That's our time. Thanks for watching Monday Special. I am Anki Guta. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you Thursday. We'll be talking politics. See you then.